the people that are in our lives, and then they're not in our lives, but we hold them in our heart. And that's true, of course, but I'd like to expand the interpretation of that song a little bit wider to include all the experiences that come into our lives, that these are a part of who we are. We are creators in this world. And I had the idea in the last service, the image came to me of the chef's shows. Does anybody watch those cooking shows where they have competitions? And so there's one that I've seen it like once, I think, and they give them these ingredients, these random ingredients, like, okay, you get marshmallows and asparagus and pork chops. So make something with that. You know, whatever it might be. And that's what life is like. We are getting tossed ingredients all the time. And some of them are the equivalent of chocolate. You know, it's like, oh, can I have more of that? I love it so much. And then there are others that are like, I don't know about you, but for me, sardines. Oh, please, you don't really expect me to eat that, do you? So we all have our preferences of what we think is yummy and what isn't. But life dishes this stuff to us. When I was a kid, there was a program on TV that had a little segment, and this guy was a cartoonist, and he would always have this an easel, yes, he had an easel there. Who likes charades? So anyway, on the easel, he would have these 5 random marks, and his challenge every week was to take that and make something of it. And I would sit there as a little kid with my jaw dropped open, just fascinated, because he could always make some kind of cartoon out of that. And I didn't know, how could he do that? It just seemed so amazing. And yet that's what we are all offered in our lives. We are offered these 5 random marks, or more, depending on how old we are, that we get to make into something. So, Tom, when you were saying earlier about the prayer of thy will be done, we have to understand that in terms of, at least in unity, because we don't come at things from a traditional perspective. There is no thy that's out there. The creative force that we refer to when we say thy, that creative force is right here. It is expressing as us. There is no God out there that has a will for us that is different than what we have for ourselves when we are coming from our higher selves. When we're coming from our ego, oh, there we have some room for discussion. But that high part of us, that high creator that is making our life, that is the one that has the will to make beauty and goodness out of everything. We say God is everywhere. Every single tradition that you will find will tell you that. The divine is in all that is. But then we separate and we say, well, no, that's not God there. That's awful. That's sardines. And the truth is that it is. Everything is divine. But we don't like it all. Some of it we do not like one little bit. Some of it nobody likes, actually. We can get the whole village to agree with us that this is awful. And yet we say, it's all good. How many of you have the t-shirt? It's all good. I was going to wear it, but I don't actually have the t-shirt. But I've seen the t-shirt. You've all seen the t-shirt. It's a common saying, it's all good. But then what do you do when things happen that you don't find is good? So you know, because it was in the newsletter, that we had this experience with Dan and Charlotte's son that was terrible. And we can all agree that this was not good. This was not good, that somebody breaks into a home and kills someone. And that their son is left with the choice of killing another human being or being killed. That is not good. Nobody will say it is. So what does it mean then? How do we get into a place of it's all good? What do we do as a spiritual community when something like this is happening, not just in another part of the country, which is bad enough, but right here in our family? What do we do with that? I think the first thing we have to do is understand that there will never be an explanation that makes it all good. So if you're looking for one, stop looking. You won't find it. Goodness is the field of energy from which we all spring. And we all, in our ego, have freedom of will to crimp the hose, so to speak. You know, think about it. Like, I've been watching my grandson recently, and if we're trying to tell him something, we're hoping this will make him feel better. I'm not listening, is what he's saying. We all do that, don't we? In one way or another at different times. We don't want to hear it. And in our lives, when we do that, when we purposely plug our ears to divine prompting, and we just go running headstrong, we're going to do what we're going to do, I'm not listening, I think this is a great idea, I'm going to just go do it, then we usually get some consequences that give us an opportunity to rethink. Now that we're sitting here with this in front of us. And as creators, we now have the opportunity to make something of it. I know in talking with Dan, he's talked about he and Brennan, his son, are like, okay, this has been put in front of us, what will we do with it? That is the important question. What will we do with it? How can we use this for good? When things come into our lives that we don't like, we want to make meaning of them. And sometimes it's possible to make meaning. Sometimes there is some explanation available, but mostly, there is not. And we waste our energy looking for that explanation. I have a friend who has been going through the eldering process, and in the eldering process, her memory is not what it used to be, and she forgets a lot of things. And she was saying to me, I just feel like I'm losing my grip. And it's a terrible feeling. And I remember saying to her, maybe if you think about it as you're loosening your grip, that control that you try to have on everything, maybe if you think of it as that's a good thing, to loosen that, and to have more of an open hand to receive whatever is happening. Maybe that would make it easier. And it did make it easier for her, at least in that moment, and then she forgot about it. It's just, life is just happening. And the mantra that I would invite us all to have is life is happening for us. Life is happening for us,
not to us. Because when we think of life as happening to us, then we feel victimized. And we're very unhappy. We feel powerless. But if we think of life as happening for us, then everything is those 5 random marks. Those crazy ingredients that we master chefs get to make into a culinary masterpiece. We have to have that commitment to life, to receive life in that way. We can't make exceptions. We can't say this is always true unless it's sardines. I know those of you who love sardines are just saying, would she pick a different example? Except I don't believe that any of you actually could possibly love sardines, so I'm going to stick with it. Oh, look at these sardine lovers with their hands up. You know, it's not just what life hands us personally, but then there's also accepting. Radically acceptance means accepting that we are all good, just as we are, without going into what's wrong with us. It means accepting other people who are so different from us often, in many ways. I received this beautiful gift from Charlotte today that she got in Morocco. Morocco, a land that's very different from ours, full of Islams. Or not Muslims, I'm sorry. Islamic people. And that's a group that we have a lot of trouble with. Not maybe people in this room, but in our country, we have a lot of prejudice and a lot of fear. And so I love that I can be here and bring those Islamic people into our space with us. And just wrap them in love as we wrap each other. As we vote this week, if we haven't voted already, we dive into that political scene. And there's so much opportunity there for hatred, for feeling high and mighty, and we're right and they're wrong, whoever they are. And yet, what good does that do? We step out of good when we do that. We step into ego and fear. So our task is to remember that no matter what is going on, yes, it may be evil because somebody crimped the hose, somebody plugged their ears and would not listen to the prompting of spirit. We don't know why the things that we label evil happen. We just know that no matter what it is an ingredient that we will carry in our hearts. It will change who we are, but not make us worse unless we make that choice. It will expand who we are and allow us to become more. When my mother died, when I was a little girl, that was not a good thing. And there was nothing that could make it a good thing. I tried to make it a good thing. I tried to say, oh, well, God gave me a better mother when my dad remarried. But that's crazy. That's a little kid trying to make sense of something that has no sense. But what I got to do over the course of my life is make something of that ingredient. What I found was my heart getting broken open meant that there was more love that could pour out. So even the things that are not good things, don't let anybody say, oh, that is good, you just don't see it. It's not good, but you can take it and make something good of it because you are a powerful creator. You are all good, and goodness is what you do and who you are. And so you always, always, always have that power. So no matter what life is tossing at you, remember the chef that you are. Don't worry about it. Just be happy and make wonderful tamales and beef bourguignons and salads and whatever it is that you want in life.